So today's video is one that I have just avoided making, but it's been requested so many times and finally I'm getting around to it. So this is how to wear fragrance. So what I'm going to talk about in this video is not going to be like my spray technique. I'm not going to show you where I spray and claim that I empty half a bottle on myself. That's just not me. What I'm going to talk about in this video is going to be the factors that you need to consider depending upon what you need out of a fragrance. So of course, the majority of how a fragrance wears is determined by the formulation, the ingredients themselves. But there are a few things that you can do to influence its wear. So how you prep, for example, or where you apply the fragrance can have effects on longevity, on projection, and on sillage. So of course, different people will want different things from fragrance. Some people just want a skin scent, other people want to be beast mode, to have immense projection, to fill rooms, and everybody's idea of that is valid. And I'm just going to give you some pointers in this video to show you what you need to consider when you're wearing fragrances to get what you want out of them. So if you've not seen me before, I'm Claire. I talk all about fragrance on this channel. I'm a scientist in real life, so I always try to talk about perfume science if I can get away with it. And I also love talking about perfume history, and I also love doing perfume reviews. So if that kind of thing interests you and you haven't already subscribed, then please do consider subscribing, and please also press the like button if you do enjoy this kind of content. So let me be frank about this. I have avoided making this video because I just see so much absolute claptrap talked about this subject. Really, the most important thing, and I cannot stress this enough, is getting the right fragrance for you. Because if you do want a skin scent and you buy a beast mode fragrance, nobody can help you. You need to get the fragrance that is at the level of projection, of sillage, etc., that you are comfortable with. Because if you're not happy in your own skin, however you spray it is not going to influence that. This is really just the final adjustments to make that fragrance the best that it can be for you and for what you want from it. It is not a magical transformation. And I think some people who talk about this topic will talk about particular methods as being a panacea, as being a way to transform fragrances into exactly what you want. And that is not what this video is about. It's about minor adjustments. I think really with this video, I have in mind, perhaps you're planning for a big event and you want to guarantee that the way you wear your fragrance is going to suit that day. And I think that's what this video is for. It's to make you aware of what you might need to consider to get the best possible outcome out of the fragrance that you've chosen for that big event. So let's start off with the basics, because if you don't understand the basics, then you won't know about how these other factors influence your fragrance. So how do we actually smell fragrances? So fragrances are really collections of volatile chemicals that have different sizes, and so they evaporate in orders. So the top notes are the smaller molecules, and those are the things that you sense first, and then as you go down the pyramid, you're supposedly meant to have larger molecules evaporating last, and those are the ones that really linger on your skin. They're the base notes. So what causes these fragrance molecules to evaporate, to become volatile? It's your body heat, or sometimes it's friction. And that is really supplying those molecules with energy, making them vibrate more, which means eventually they can break free from your skin and they can go into the air to be smelt. So in reality, we don't smell very separate top, middle and base notes. Really, we smell a mixture because all of those evaporation temperatures overlap, and the energies required for those different sizes of molecules will overlap. We'll just get more evaporation of the top notes at those lower energies than we will of the base notes. But ultimately, they aren't separate. They evaporate in some form together. So this is really why fragrances evolve. When you first spray a fragrance, of course, you're atomizing that fragrance. You're mixing that fragrance with the air. And if you spray fragrance in sunlight, you can see the droplets falling in the air. And that's going to give you an initial burst of the fragrance. But as soon as that settles, then you're subject to that volatility of the fragrance molecules and that evaporation in some kind of order of the fragrance. So in the top notes, you're going to have lighter things like citrus notes, green notes, And then in the base notes, you're going to have the musks, the ambers, the resins, the vanillas. And in the mid, you're going to have the things like the fruits and the florals. So next, what can you do to influence how your own fragrance wears? So I think if you've been around the fragrance block a few times, you will have heard this one already, but it really is the starting building block of wearing fragrance. So whether fragrance is sprayed on your clothes or on your skin, it needs to stick there. And this can really be helped by your natural skin oils. If you do have dry skin, it's going to be a much shorter lived fragrance on your skin than if you're a person with oilier skin. So if you're an oily skin person like me, absolutely no problem. You probably could benefit from some moisturiser. If you're dry skinned, carrier oils or unscented moisturisers or even complementary scented products can really help with longevity of fragrances. So my own preference is to choose something unscented, but of course lots of people do fragrance layering nowadays, so people use perhaps vanilla body creams with woody fragrances or oudi fragrances. You might even be lucky enough to have bought a matching moisturiser or to get a moisturiser free with your fragrance. If you have that, then great. It's a great way to extend the wear of your fragrance. I know a lot of people highlight things like Vaseline. I personally don't recommend Vaseline because one, I find the texture extremely unpleasant, and two, I think the smell of Vaseline is really strong, and I think that interrupts my enjoyment of fragrances. But it's entirely up to you what you use. Basically, any kind of moisturiser is going to help with longevity. So if you watch other videos on this topic, you will see sometimes people discussing skin pH, and there are a number of reasons why I don't think this is something that is that important to planning out how you're going to wear your fragrance. One, I think, most people don't walk around with skin pH test strips to check out their own pH levels. Nobody is dabbing pH test strips on their skin and going, oh, I'm pH 5.2 today. It's just not a thing. And different areas of your body do have different pHs, but generally the areas that are most different are places you would never consider spraying a fragrance. So places like your anus or your armpits, they're just not places where we spray fragrances. Also, just who you are is going to influence your pH. So for example, if you are somebody with darker skin, your skin is generally going to be more acidic. If you're someone who is older, so perhaps people over 70 are going to have more alkaline skins. It's because pH is a proxy for your skin barrier function. So if you have a better barrier function, you will have oilier skin. You will have less need for moisturiser. So really, the most important thing is that you have moisturised, not your skin pH. Do not get hung up on pH levels of skin because I really don't feel like it's relevant. And I tried looking into whether pH levels influence which notes in your fragrance shine or don't shine, and I couldn't find any scientific sources to back up that. If you can find a scientific source to back that up, please do let me know. But basically, I found fragrance influencers discussing this topic, but nothing actually scientific. So I honestly think that moisturisation is much more important than ever thinking about skin pH. So the second thing to consider is where you're spraying. So some people want to spray on clothes, some people want to spray on skin, and other people will want to spray even in their hair. So which things do we need to consider with each placement of our fragrance? So let's start off with clothes. So for big events, you might be really dressing up and you don't want to ruin your clothes by spraying fragrance on them and creating a permanent stain. So you want to really be checking how you're spraying, where you're spraying. There are certain materials that you will want to avoid spraying fragrance on. In particular, silk is a complete no for spraying fragrance over. Also, the type of fragrance that you're using may determine that you actually don't want to spray it on clothes. So for example, some older fragrances that may contain jasmine extracts or spider lily extracts can be bright red, and you definitely wouldn't want to spray these directly on clothing. There are also fragrances that contain vanilla. Those fragrances can be very dark in colour, and those also you would not want to spray even on non-sensitive items of clothing. Nowadays, most modern synthetics are specifically manufactured to be colourless. So you may have noticed the immense difference in colour of fragrances such as Alien by Thierry Mugler over the years. If you think back to the colour of Alien when it was first released, it was literally bright red. And now if you pick up a bottle of Alien, even if it's been sitting in a cupboard for several years, it will never change from anything from just slightly off colourless. The fragrance has been reformulated with more modern ingredients. That colour difference is reformulation, it's not ageing. So next, let's think about hair. So why would you want to spray your hair? Well, your hair moves. So you're going to distribute the fragrance in the air every time you are talking to someone or every time you're walking. It's a great place to place fragrance, to create sillage, to create projection, and to enjoy your fragrance just for you. So people do love to spray their hair, and there are specific hair perfumes. Why are these different? These are often water-based, and the reason for that is because alcohol is damaging to your hair. It's a drying agent, and you don't want drying agents on your hair. Your hair is something that is a dead protein. You don't want to spray alcohol on your hair. That alcohol can also make your hair more susceptible to UV damage. So I think I'd say if you don't have a hair perfume, or if you don't want to buy a hair perfume, if you do want to spray your hair, if you have long hair, you can spray the underside of the hair that isn't visible, the hair that isn't being exposed to the sun. And also I would say don't do it every day. Just do it for those special occasions where you really want people to notice your fragrance. And that way, I don't think you necessarily do need to buy a hair perfume. So the remaining area is probably where most of us spray, and that's on our skin. So the consideration here is, are you living somewhere where it's very sunny? Are you going to be outside? Are you going to be on a plane, perhaps sitting near a window where you could be exposed to UV? If any of those are a yes, then you really need to consider where you're spraying your fragrance. If you continuously, for example, spray your chest and you wear low-cut tops, you are going to have excessive sun damage as a result of the alcohol disrupting your skin barrier and removing some of those protective oils from your skin. Of course, every day, if you're exposing your skin to the sun, you should be wearing UV protection. If you're spraying your fragrance on top of your UV protection, that is not going to be good for it, and it may end up meaning that it's less effective or even breaking down. So really, in sunshine, you want to be spraying your fragrance in areas which are covered up. Fragrance companies are already limited as to the ingredients they can use, which may make your skin more sun sensitive. So for example, if you choose to wear a vintage formulation of a fragrance, those formulations may have more sun sensitizing chemicals in them, which mean that you are more likely to burn. So for example, IFRA have legislated to limit particular components of citrus oils because they know that those particular elements of citrus oils make your skin more sensitive to the sun. And that's why vintage fragrances perhaps don't offer as much protection from those effects as modern fragrances. So really what I'm saying is it's worth considering where you're spraying to be on the safe side. It's really not worth potentially damaging your skin long term in order to wear a fragrance. So what other factors should you think about when you're considering where to spray your fragrance? Well, you should think about the type of fragrance it is, the formulation of fragrance it is, the notes that fragrance might have. So I'm going to go through a few scenarios and just talk through my logic with where you might spray those fragrances. So the first scenario is you've got a really fresh feeling citrusy fragrance. So citrus fragrances are notorious for having very short longevity, but having a very zingy top note. So through how you spray the fragrance alone, how could you potentially improve the longevity of the fragrance on you? And how could you enhance that zinginess of the citrus? So to improve the longevity of the fragrance, what you're trying to do is to reduce the speed at which the fragrance warms up, because we know those citrus top notes are incredibly volatile anyway. You're going to want to spray away from the hotter areas of your body. So you're going to avoid the chest area, and you're going to avoid anywhere where the blood is very close to the surface of your skin. But if you spray in places that are cooler, or if you spray this fragrance on clothing perhaps even, to try to extend its longevity, then you're going to lose some of that zinginess that comes with citrus fragrances, because that is really an effect of the top notes evaporating, becoming volatile all very quickly. That's what gives you that big citrus hit. So this is going to be a playoff between whether you want longevity or whether you want that zingy, lovely top note. I think for a special occasion, if you're wearing a citrus fragrance, my advice would be take a decant, because it's something that is not going to last a long time unless it's packed full of, base heavy aroma chemicals, in which case you will lose the citrus anyway. But I think really just respraying the fragrance occasionally is the best solution here. Of course, you can try to extend the wear just by spraying on clothes and away from those hotter areas. But if you want that zingy top note constantly, you will just have to respray. So, of course, this would also apply to other top note heavy fragrance categories. So, for example, greener fragrances, also things with sparkly fruits, and things with light spices. So next, what about if you have a skin scent? How do you enhance a skin scent? So a skin scent, the clue's in the name. You want it generally on your skin, but you don't want something that's going to pump it out, really. You want something that's going to give you a warm glow, something that people are going to smell when they come into your little scent bubble. It's quite an intimate thing, isn't it, a skin scent? It sort of says, I'm happy to let you in my space, and that's what you want to achieve with a skin scent. So that's going to be very personal areas such as underneath layers of clothing, so that when you move your clothing, that's when you get the waft of the fragrance. You might also want to spray it on perhaps a scarf, because a scarf is something that moves with you and again creates that kind of enveloping feel of a skin scent. But of course, remember, if your fragrance is musk based, musks generally smell just better somehow when they mix with the human scent. They need to be on skin to shine. If it's meant to be a your skin but better kind of fragrance, then spraying it on skin is probably advisable. So the next scenario is you have a fragrance and you want some sillage from it. You want a nice trail behind you as you walk. So how can you help to achieve that by where you spray? So essentially you want to spray on areas that move when you walk. So if you're wearing shorts, if you're wearing a dress, a great place to spray is behind your knees. That's a warm area. It's going to create a nice little trail as you walk. It's going to waft up as well when you're standing around. It's a great place to spray fragrances in the summer as well, because that area is generally not too exposed to the sun. I would also advise spraying on your wrists and spraying on your arms, because those again are areas that move when you move. And I would also suggest spraying in your hair, as well as any other areas that you feel like you normally spray your fragrance, because those areas are going to have the most movement and create the best trail. So what about if you just want maximum projection from your fragrances? So for lots of projection, you want to be spraying your fragrance firstly somewhere warm, but also you want to be spraying across a wide area. So your entire chest, the back of your neck, behind your ears, and also your wrists. Places that are warm but exposed are the best places to choose. I would also suggest that if you're wearing fragrance and you've got several layers on, always add some fragrance to your outer layer, because however much you spray your skin, if that fragrance is below 3 layers of clothing because it's wintertime, no one is really going to sense that fragrance. So next, you might want the best longevity from your fragrance. How can you try to achieve that? So for me with longevity, it's about spraying in a variety of places. So I would suggest spraying both on skin and on clothes, because actually spraying underneath clothes is going to provide a little reserve of fragrance. and might mean that your fragrance lasts longer because of that reserve. It traps some of the fragrance molecules. The same thing with clothing. It's going to trap some of your fragrance in your clothing, and hopefully that's going to mean that you're going to be able to notice that fragrance for a longer time period. It's a real balance though between working out how much to spray, spraying enough, and just not overwhelming people. This is something that really takes a bit of trial and error to work out with different fragrances sometimes. Sometimes fragrances get louder as they develop almost. Spraying enough but not overdoing it is a really careful balance, and I would even suggest actually again taking a decant with you, and that way you can always add more fragrance and you won't be so tempted to just overspray at the beginning. Remember that humidity massively affects people's perception of fragrances. So increased humidity means that we all have a higher perception of fragrance. It's because your nose is helped along by having damp air in which to capture the fragrance molecules, and that really enhances your sensation of fragrances. So again, if you're going somewhere and it's going to be very humid, then you might want to spray a little bit less of your fragrance compared to somewhere where the air is going to be very dry. So in conclusion, I think there's a lot of hearsay on this topic, and I've really tried to stay away from that. But what I believe is the biggest factor in influencing how a fragrance wears is the formulation itself. These things are just minor tweaks to how a fragrance wears, but they are things that you could consider. So thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, then please do press the like button, and please also consider subscribing if you haven't done already. And please do let me know if you've been to a special event recently. Did you agonise over what to wear? And also, did you enjoy wearing what you wore to that special event? I'd love to know your story. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.